Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lean right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. Hey guys, so in this video, Alvin and I will be doing a bipartisan, or giving our bipartisan takes rather, on the future of the Democratic Party and where they go from here. There's been lots of interesting little tidbits of news on the new direction of the Democratic Party and what they might do going forward.
Yeah, so obviously Democrats suffering a brutal loss in 2024 and wanting to redirect going into the midterms 2026 and of course 2028 when they'll have to field another candidate for president. And there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about today here and there, but none bigger than the Democrat National Convention, or Democrat National Committee, I should say, electing Ken Martin as their new chair for the
hmm
foreseeable future, sort of getting rid of Jamie Harrison after that loss in 2024. And why don't you take it away with what this means for the Democrats?
I mean, this one, the results of this were pretty interesting here. There was kind of a consensus in the Democratic Party among the leadership of the Democratic Party, or a belief at least, that Ben Wickler, the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party, was the favorite for this election. I say this because a bunch of the billionaire donors to the party were backing Wickler, progressives were backing Wickler, and party leadership, most notably, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer were all also backing Ben Wickler. But despite all that, Ken Martin, the chair of the Minnesota Democratic Party, managed to actually get the DNC votes needed to come out on top. Honestly, I find this interesting in the fact that Ken Martin was very tied to the Kamala Harris campaign. I believe he was one of the chairs of Harris's campaign. So it does show that at least Harris might still have some pull in the party potentially. So there's one factor in there. But really, I think in terms of like how they'll actually perform as chair, I think they're going to be quite similar. They both come from Midwestern states, and the state parties of their states are both very effective. I would say the Minnesota Democratic Party is definitely a force in their state. So I'm not like particularly upset that one or the other won, but yeah, it is interesting that Ken Martin managed to come from behind victory here.
Yeah, I think most people on like political X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, were thinking that Wickler was gonna win this quite easily. I mean, you see the votes here, Ken Martin winning in an uh, outright majority on the first ballot, which was also surprising. I mean, if you looked at the endorsements, Ken Martin here, most of his endorsements were really just Minnesota endorsements
hmm
on a big scale. I mean, really, his big senators are mainly Minnesota or Minnesota adjacent. I mean, you have, Minnesota Tim Walz, et cetera, and reps too. But if you go down to the endorsements, which I was highlighting for Ben Wickler, you have all the big names here. Really, I mean, this obviously is a lot bigger than the other endorsement page. Of course, you talked about House leadership and former House leadership as well. You have Senate leadership as well over here with Chuck Schumer and many statewide officials that were obviously very enthusiastic about him, as well as other big names. And yeah, I mean, like you said, you have Kamala Harris, who I guess technically didn't endorse anyone, but
No,
was
yeah.
seen more tied. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah, more tied to Martin. Yes, that's
yes,
what I
for
was
sure.
gonna say. And yeah, there we go with that. And I think this is a big election because if you look at this Quinnipiac poll here, moving on, you can see that the Democrat Party is a little bit in trouble right now. You have 31% of Americans finding the Democrat Party favorable in their view, and 57% of Americans finding this unfavorable. And if you look into the breakdown by party, it's even worse because independents, only 22% of independents find the Democratic Party favorable, which is pretty low. I mean, obviously, if you're only winning 20% of independents, you're going to get nowhere nationally. And also, only 39% of women even. These are pretty record lows for Democrats, and they need to turn around, especially when you look over here at the Republican Party, which, yes, is still unfavorable here at -2, 43% favorable. but that's a lot better. The independents are still negative on the Republican Party. I mean, that makes sense because independents are
Yeah.
obviously not choosing to identify with either party, so they're more likely to find both parties unfavorable. But a lot better percentage here at -12, as well as doing at least winning one gender and the other one, almost running on par with the other. Looks a lot better for the Republicans.
Yeah, I think for sure you definitely see after 2024, the Democratic Party kind of spinning out of control a little bit, and the fact that they're trying to find a way back into the political fray. Like they're trying to latch on to things. The opposition to Trump right now isn't really organized or unified, which is a stark contrast from say 2017, where the Democrats pretty quickly unified against him. Um, Now it just kind of feels like they're struggling to latch on to different things. And I think you saw it a bit with uh, the government the shutdown of government programs by the Trump administration, shutting down U.S. aid. Like Democrats are like hesitating on like, okay, where should we jump in? Like, where should we really jump on the backlash train? And try to ride that back into power. So yeah, like I think we're still in a period where the party message is a little skewed, a little actually, a better word is confused. Like, do we want to stick with our current positions? Do we want to move right? Do we want to move left? And I think that indecisiveness is also costing the party, is in terms of, yeah, its raw favorability here, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. There's a big disconnect, I think, in the Democrat Party now. Obviously Trump winning all three, all winning a trifecta, winning the House, Senate, and presidency there in Washington is going to put the opposite party in disarray. But I mean, in 2016, you had people, fighting Trump getting even confirmed. You had people like raising objections when the House was certifying Trump's election. You had people, saying, we need to not elect Trump in the Electoral College, doing everything they could to not let Trump get into power. And then even when he did get into power, Democrats were organizing all the time. There were marches,
Hmm.
anti-Trump marches everywhere, and it plummeted Trump's, approval and favorability very quickly. But nowadays, you see Trump's approval, quite high actually. At least in the positives, that's a high for Trump for
Yeah.
sure. And people are very optimistic about Trump's presidency. At least, I mean, obviously here, even 54% of Americans optimistic about Trump's presidency, and that's really good, honestly, for Trump. I've never seen numbers this high for him. So really, Democrats, sort of in disarray. Do they move right on issues like immigration, which they clearly lost on, might have cost them the 2024 election, or do they move to the left to try to, pander to more working class Americans? But is that even the way to pander to working class Americans? They don't know. But I guess we can move on here, as those are sort of rhetorical questions that can't be answered. And we can talk about some more good news for Democrats because those poll numbers sort of looked atrocious. We'll turn now to some better news where in some special elections, Democrats are doing well. And so, for example, and we have this Iowa seat, this state, uh, the state Senate race here in the 35th district. And why don't you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so I mean, interestingly, Democrats are still doing pretty well in special elections. This is for a state Senate district in Iowa, so pretty small election. Is the election to fill a vacancy, but this is a district that Trump won in 2024 by 21 points. He won by an absolutely massive margin in this district, and Democrats actually managed to flip it a couple days ago in late January with the Democrat winning by around 4 points. So, I mean, that is like a massive, that's what, like a 25 point swing. Um, I do find that there is some hope in that for Democrats and the fact that they're still doing pretty well in low turnout elections. I do think that like we kind of did see this in 2024. We kind of saw this in 2022 with Democrats doing really well in special elections. And I think this kind of suggests that this trend will continue over the next year or so. Um, so yeah, like pretty good results just out of Iowa, and it's a flipped seat too. So we were gaining one in the Iowa State Senate.
Yeah, pretty big for Dems here as well. And if we turn now to, I guess we'll go back to Minnesota, which we were just talking about, but and another win for Democrats here in the special elections in the state Senate, which was actually the deciding seat actually to take the majority
Hmm.
in the state Senate. Pretty big there. Like we can see, Democrats outperforming now in a post Trump election in a special election. I obviously there's many factors to this, but I don't think the public has soured on Trump just yet. So it's not just backlash as we can
Mm-mm.
see in the Quinnipiac
No.
poll. I think it's definitely more the education gap and Democrats winning more and more high propensity voters that will actually turn out for special elections, the very tuned in people, because honestly, I don't even know if I would have known about this. I probably would have, but these are very, very unknown races that happen in the middle of nowhere, happen on random Tuesdays throughout the year where people
Yep.
are just working. They don't know that these are happening. So, very difficult to make high turnout for these races. So, Republicans are likely going to start losing out on these races more and more. And as we can talk about in a second, these are likely going to be worse and worse predictors for general elections as they used to be.
I mean, Um, so yeah, like as you mentioned before, yeah, the Minnesota race also saw a massive Dem shift, 14
Yeah.
points, in the heart of Minneapolis there, 14, shifting 14 points to the left relative to 2024. So yeah, Democrats have been doing better in these special elections. But yeah, to your point, yes, I do agree for the most part that they are going to get become worse and worse predictors in general elections. Um, although yeah, just because, yeah, the education gap, as you mentioned earlier, for these little special elections, turnout is super low. You're only getting like super educated, super into it, uh, political sort of activist-esque people voting in these very tiny elections, and though that this very highly educated group is increasingly Democratic, so it's that's part of the why these districts are swinging so far left. But yeah, I definitely think it could have interesting implications for like, um, even special elections for House districts, like in Stefanik's district, she's retiring. If Democrats can swing that district 25 points, then it's in play. So you have interesting implications for that. But yeah, about general elections, I don't know. I mean, I definitely don't think it'll work for presidential elections because turnout is way too big. You get a very more diversely educated group of American citizens voting in that, with the higher turnout elections there. But it could go for midterms. The 2022 specials were a good predictor for the 2022 midterms. So I bet if Democrats are hoping anything, they're hoping that somehow this could be applied to 2026. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was showing this graphic before, but
Mhm.
special elections have been better at predicting the House than the generals in the presidential years. However, they've still been slipping kind of more Democrat favorable, as we can see, more in the midterms, and then also just recently with Republicans taking more and more of the working class, Democrats sort of slipping in this predictive factor here. And we sort of saw this as well going into the 2024 election. I mean, if we do look here, there's a lot of blue in 2023 here, and Dems overperforming by 11 points, for example, in the opening months of 2023, and so this was sort of seen by a lot of pundits as good for Democrats. Even though the polls were showing good Republican results, and it gave us some pause when we were actually examining the polls because we were like, no, I mean, the polls are probably likely to be off as they were in 2022 or something, and that led some people to be more bullish for Democrats, but special elections have been slightly worse. However, I mean for predictive measures for general elections. However, I think that's sort of a side piece of this video because really we want to examine where Democrats are going from here. And I mean, it looks like they could be on the up with these special elections, but it's sort of difficult to tell. And I think mainly we just have to look at the fact that Democrats are sort of in a down phase right now with this Quinnipiac poll. This we'll see if Ken Martin can do anything, but we'll just have to see if he can fundraise and work it because 2025 elections are coming soon as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll definitely see. I mean, we're going to see what some of the pathing of the Democratic Party in the upcoming months for sure. We have some critical primaries in New Jersey, Virginia, and New York City that can potentially give some insight into the direction of the party. And I definitely think as the months go on, I think the Democrats will eventually organize around a firm pathing to opposing the Trump administration. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I'll have to see. I mean, lots of current events as well with all the tariff news, you know, stuff with planes, a lot of stuff happening in the US. I mean, when Trump's president, you can't just relax on the news cycle. So Democrats will have to be prepared to react and respond to anything going on in Washington right now with Republican unified control, or they're going to have no chance in the future. So we'll see how this election works out, and we'll see if these specials mean anything in the coming weeks and months. So thank you very much for watching this video. Like this video down below if you enjoyed. Comment down below any thoughts you have of this for this video, or if you have suggestions for future videos. Subscribe to this channel down below so you don't miss our future content as we move into the real bit of the Trump presidency. And thanks for watching. Share this video with your family and friends.
See you guys.